All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back. We're here with NBA Finals, Game 1. That's right, Thunder, Pacers. And we're here to give you all the NBA DFS picks and lineup advice for DraftKings and FanDuel for tonight's first game of the 2025 NBA Finals. Welcome, I'm Brian Juster, co-founder here at Occupy Fantasy. Not your normal NBA host, but had to step in for the vibes for the first game of the finals. I'm joined by our lead NBA analyst at Occupy Fantasy. It's Chuck Silver at I Am the Boss OK on DraftKings. You've seen him in your contest. Chuck, what's up, man? How are you?
I'm doing great. Really excited for game one of the finals. We haven't had WNBA on some days, so like no NBA or WNBA has been really tough, but we're here, and I don't know. I think that the public just thinks OKC is going to steamroll them. I do too, so hopefully we get some kind of good series out of it, but I'm excited for DFS at least. Have a lot of tickets. I'm sure a lot of the viewers do too.
Yeah, everyone has lots of tickets. It's a big reason why we do this Game 1 NBA Finals. We normally wind it down during the playoffs. The action and the interest isn't as strong, just to be honest, but a lot of our members and viewers do have satellite tickets to tonight's big contest on DraftKings and FanDuel, so we'll try to cover all that. We'll be here for 30 to 45 minutes, depending on the number of questions you get. We have a rough agenda for this show, but you all will also drive the content. So if you have questions, throw them in here during the live show in the YouTube channel and in the chat, and we will answer them along the way. We already got some people in here. We got Jose, Heath, Rare, The Douche, Swerve. What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Appreciate you joining. So what we're going to do here, again, because everyone has a lot of tickets to the bigger contest, I'm going to bring up our NBA DFS strategy guide. Now, if you haven't read this, you should. It's free to do so. It's on our website, occupyfantasy.com. And our NBA manager, Boyle, put this all together. And then we also have some tips specifically for NBA single game strategy. And it was different for a while, but now that FanDuel has moved over to basically the same exact format, we can copy and paste all of the strategies here. So we'll talk about the various ways to get different and how it applies to this game, the Pacers and the Thunder. And then we'll get Chuck Stake, who's the NBA expert, on some of the guys playing in tonight's game. So, Chuck, as we start from the top in this NBA strategy guide, captain MVP selection is one of the ways we can get different. And really the section of the strategy guide that we want to focus on here is the uniqueness and larger contests, because if someone like me who plays a lot of NFL Showdown and MMA, you can create a lot of unique lineups that are very different and still have a chance of winning. That is not the case in NBA DFS, right? We might see a 12-7 NFL game where that leaves 20,000 on the table for a solo winner. We won't see anything like that ever in NBA DFS. So for our viewers out there, how do we balance creating somewhat unique lineups while also make sure that they're actually good and can win?
Well, that's the thing. I think if you're trying to just make a full set of fully unique lineups, you're probably going to you're just giving up too many points in projection. And so you have to be comfortable chopping a few ways. I mean, if you chop 4 or 5 ways, 250K up top on DraftKings tonight, you're still walking away with a pretty penny. And so tonight specifically, looking at our expected exposures, we have SGA at the top, followed by Jalen Williams, Tyrese, and Chet. I'm pretty sure SGA is going to come in a lot higher than expected. I'm running a lot more SGA captain, which means I'm mixing in a lot more guys like Kenrich Williams. I think Thomas Bryant's the backup center today, so guys like him, Isaiah Joe. We have Aaron Wiggins at the top of value, so we're going to be mixing him in. But yeah, like you said, just trying to find that unique lineup without giving up too much in projection. And I don't know, with the salaries today, it's just really easy to fit SGA at captain on both sides. So you got to lean into it, I think. If you think Indiana wins this game, going against what everyone else thinks, then that could be a really strong stand to take too, just mixing a little bit more Indiana captain. But the value plays are really strong, so I really don't think we have to dive too deep into the mid-range, although I have shares of guys like Nemhard, Hartenstein, Miles Turner in there, so we'll see how that goes.
The pricing does make it difficult, right? Because when you have someone projected like SGA and the sites make it easy to fit these guys in, their captain ownership and MVP ownership is generally worthwhile. Whereas if we had tighter pricing or even a higher collection of studs, there would be more merit to playing cheaper captains or lower owned captains. But again, if you're playing the larger contests, and we've seen this, Chuck, over the last 5, 6, 7 years that DraftKings has been running, especially DraftKings has been running this tip-off special, this Game 1 final special. We've actually seen two unique winners, and we've seen a couple lighter chops along the way as well. Because, again, while NBA is pretty predictable, Game 1 of a new series, and I'll talk to you about the rotations here in a second, is ripe for, if there's one chance for us to be unique and have a chance and things to be a little bit off, it is Game 1 of a new series. So let's go back to the NBA strategy guide here. And here are a couple ways that we have described and we know are true not to tie with hundreds of entries. And this applies to your smaller contests as well. Just as we lay out these strategies for this game, the smaller the contest is, maybe you only take one of these strategies, or maybe you lightly apply one of these strategies. In the larger contests that you play, you can start to add on and multiply some of these strategies. And Chuck, one way, one way is leaving salary on the table. And with softer pricing, this becomes much more viable. Again, it's not like NFL Showdown or anything like that. But if you leave 500 or more on the table, which is especially viable tonight on both sites, really, there's two reasons that you're doing that. One is a mid-price player outscores a stud or someone in the higher price tier. So someone like, if we just look on DraftKings, Miles Turner, Nembhard, Nesmith, Hartenstein outscore Holmgren, Siakam, Jalen Williams. Probably unlikely, maybe possible. Or some of these cheaper guys that you've mentioned a couple times, Thomas Bryant, Shepard, Kenrich Williams, Mathurin, they outscore that next tier of Obi Toppin and TJ McConnell, Kassan Wallace, right? So that's one way, or really it's two ways to build unique while leaving salary on the table. Does either one of those especially interest you tonight?
I mean, I guess the route that I'm going tonight is just jamming in SGA captain, and then, for example, my top lineup on DK has it changed, but it had Thomas Bryant and Kenrich Williams, I think, as like my main lineup, I guess. So just weird stuff like that. I'm sure it's not going to be a completely unique lineup, but if it's only duped 2-3 times, then that seems great to me.
Exactly. So, and we got a question here in the chat from Jose, and it's a good question that we'll talk about next is rotation players. And as I just said, game one can be different. We saw both of these teams in the previous round switch up the rotations and new guys getting minutes a couple of the games in the previous series. So who do we know for sure on both teams are getting minutes tonight? First couple guys off the bench. Who are some guys that we expect and will categorize this? You know what? Let's start there. Who are guys that are definitely going to see minutes off the bench tonight?
Let me just pull this up real quick. The previous game. Starting with the Pacers side, it seems like Benedict Mathurin and Obi Toppin are going to be the first two guys off the bench. TJ McConnell checks in a little bit later in the first quarter. Typically, I don't think he typically checks in for Halliburton, so they'll play alongside of each other for a couple of minutes. Those would be the main guys, I guess. Thomas Bryant is just iffy because they did switch to Tony Bradley for a couple games there in the Knicks series. I think that was more to match up with Mitchell Robinson. We'll see if they feel the need to do that here. But Thomas Bryant earned his minutes back, had a huge game last time out, and so I do expect him to get the opportunity at least. If he's not playing poorly, he should stay in. Ben Shepard, I mean, we were talking about before the show, he's just kind of always out there. I don't know that he does much, and so while he deserves some ownership because we can assign him minutes for sure, I just don't feel that strongly about his fantasy production. And then at the end of the bench, this would be like blowout only plays, maybe a Jarace Walker. I don't even know who else we could consider from the Pacers.
Is Walker's out, I think, right? I saw he's out for the first.
I'm sorry, yeah, Jarace Walker's out. So actually that's pretty much it. They have 4 bench guys tonight.
All right, so there you go. And now on the OKC side, we saw guys like other Jalen Williams come in, then not play in other games. Someone like Aaron Wiggins mostly saw time, but then there was a game or two he didn't see time. So who are the OKC guys definitely going to play off the bench, and who are guys that could play that can maybe be lower owned?
The only two that I have full confidence in getting minutes tonight are Caruso and Kasson Wallace, right? Those are going to be the first two guys off the bench. We've seen OKC start Caruso in the second half over Hartenstein a few times. I don't know that they go back to that tonight, and that's something you were talking about with this is the first game of a new series. I think people are going to be thinking back to what happened in the late games of the previous series, and while the matchup, it's not completely different, but I don't think it's a guarantee that Caruso is going to start that second half. I do think he plays a lot because they're going to have him in the game to harass Halliburton the whole time, him and Lou Dort, but I think Hartenstein's a pretty decent shout. As for the rest of the bench guys on OKC, I mean, I'm taking a stand on Kenrich Williams. I think that he's going a little bit underrepresented by the field. Aaron Wiggins, I'm nervous about. He is top of the model, but I'm getting there a little bit. Isaiah Joe might get a few minutes. The other Jalen Williams might get a few minutes. It's tough to know what to do with those guys. I gave them all a few minutes. I'm getting none of like the Jalen Williams at the bottom, but I am getting a decent chunk of Kenrich Williams, Kasson Wallace, Caruso, and then I threw Aaron Wiggins in there too.
Okay, sweet. And I'm glad you mentioned Hartenstein because I actually have quite a few overs related to him, points and
Yeah.
rebounds, especially rebounds. So let's hope that he does start that second half, get a couple extra minutes there. So I really like that call. Let's go back to the strategy guide and let's see what the next strategy and angle is for uniqueness for NBA Finals contests. Let's see what else we got in the chat. Swerve says feels that fast-paced Toppin will be a better fit for the scheme than Miles Turner. What do you think of there? Any chance that Toppin gets a little more minutes, takes away from Miles Turner? What do you think?
It's possible, yeah, but I actually am taking a stand on Miles Turner too. I think he got into foul trouble and played poorly in both of the last two games. Before that, he was playing 30 plus basically every night. The field's super down on him. I don't really believe the ownership that we have projected for him, so I'm proceeding with the assumption he comes in lower owned than that. But I actually think Miles Turner's a really good play tonight. Um, I'm getting Obi Toppin mixed in there. He's kind of just a guy for me. I'm not consciously making decisions on him. His salary works and he fits. And like you said, we can definitely project him for minutes tonight.
So this goes back to the example I was talking about earlier about leaving salary and moving down to the next tier of player. If you're high on someone like Miles Turner, and again, this is for someone hand building, or maybe it's you've built your lineups out and you're just allowing this in the post build run. Let's say you have a quote unquote perfect lineup that has Chet Holmgren or Pascal Siakam. If you drop down to Miles Turner and you leave $800 or $1,400 on the table, can Turner outscore either of those guys? I think we would both agree that is unlikely, but possible. And that's a way to erase a lot of duplicates if you're playing the larger contest.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with all of that.
Perfect. All right, let's see. Boyle's in the chat. We got Josh. And just to reiterate, Josh is asking who will be the backup center for the Pacers. Chuck, you do believe that it will be Thomas Bryant earned his minutes back and that it will not be Tony Bradley. But again, first game of the series, we're not 100% sure. But Chuck, that's your lean, right?
Yeah, I mean, I thought they threw Tony Bradley in just to kind of help with Mitch Robinson, and I think it did help over Thomas Bryant. But then, I mean, Tony Bradley got hurt. They gave Thomas Bryant his minutes back, and like I said, he blew up in the last game. I can't imagine he's not the first center off the bench, and so we'd have to see some weird stuff, I think, for Tony Bradley to not just play, but to end up fantasy relevant tonight. Because even if he gets 10, 11 minutes, he still has to do something in those 10, 11 minutes, and OKC is probably the worst matchup for him.
Really quickly,
for anyone.
If you allowed both of those guys in your player pool, Tony Bradley and Thomas Bryant, would you set a rule to exclude them from the same lineup together?
I would, yeah. I'm getting 0% Tony Bradley tonight, but if I was playing some of them, for sure, definitely. And then I might want to set something with Miles Turner in that too. Probably max one of any three centers because, I mean, Thomas Bryant can do it in 10 minutes, but we're really hoping Miles Turner gets in foul trouble if that's what we're doing.
Yeah, good point. Okay, yeah, that's a really good call. All right, let's go back to the strategy guide here. And you mentioned this at the top of the show, Chuck. The next strategy is playing lower owned options, usually a mid-tier player at captain and MVP, and we might not have to dip that low if SGA soaks up that much ownership at captain and MVP. And again, usually, especially in smaller contests, usually you want to stick to a stud, or if the pricing is tight and there are a bunch of studs playing a value at captain or MVP, I don't think that's the route you want to go tonight. But if we're trying to get unique, Chuck, and this is the angle that we're looking at, and we're not playing SGA, who are the next most likely, especially when we consider price? And are there any of those mid-tier guys that are going to be 2, 3, 4% at captain that have a chance to build an optimal lineup?
So I have a different answer for this on DraftKings or FanDuel. On DraftKings, I had to cap SGA at 70% captain because I was getting 90. And so I should say I'm fading Halliburton really hard tonight. So I have a lot more salary to play with, I think, than half the field. I mean, we got Jalen Williams pretty well above Halliburton on the model. And I think the field's going to react that way too. So I expect Hallie to come in lower owned. If you want to take that shot, it's a great GPP idea. If you construct your lineup that way. But so keep that in mind as I'm talking about this. I'm fading Tyrese, and so I'm just getting all the SGA captain. Next up is Jalen Williams and Chet over on DraftKings, and then even with any captain there, I can pretty much make whatever lineup I want since I have all that salary I'm saving from Halliburton. And then over on FanDuel, same thing, just dominating SGA MVP ownership. I had to cap him at 70 there too. But my next up, Andrew Nemhard, Jalen Williams, Miles Turner, Hartenstein, Chet Holmgren in that order. And then Pascal, I got a couple shares of. And so it's a little bit different of a lineup construction, but that's where I'm going. It has to do with the pricing difference.
The pricing is you wouldn't think it just because FanDuel moved over to a very similar in fact, the same lineup construction requirements as DraftKings. Like very recently, this happened this playoffs. But yeah, the pricing is a lot different. Where you look at the cheaper guys compared to how much salary you have available, it is different. It's like NFL Showdown in the same sense as that. So you have some of those mid-tier guys more on FanDuel, which is super interesting. Any of them stand out especially? You said Nemhard, Hartenstein, Turner, Holmgren. Uh, for any reason you have any of those guys higher than the other, or you're just kind of playing them relatively equally?
The thing is, I'm getting more Nemhard. I have about 9% of him at MVP. Remember, I have 70 SGA, but Nemhard's 6K on FanDuel, and we get 60K salary to fill out 6 spots. On DraftKings, he's 7,400. We get 50K salary to fill out 6 spots, so he's just such a better play over on FanDuel. Same idea with Hartenstein. He's 6,400 on DK versus 5K whatever over on FanDuel. And so it's really just the pricing, and that kind of allows me to build lineups where I'm not getting to 2 of those super cheap bench guys. Maybe I just have one of a Kenrich Williams or a Thomas Bryant, and I'm still able to fill the rest of the spots with starters.
And just anecdotally, it feels like since FanDuel has released this new pricing and this new construction, that while, especially if you look in our model, right, you sort by FanDuel value, you see the top guys like 20, 30, 40 FanDuel value in terms of OF index compared to their salary. But you look at some of the winning lineups in the NBA finals or in NBA playoffs, and those guys really haven't been showing up because the mid-tier guys are even much cheaper. It allows you to fit in one more of those guys or one more of the higher tier guys. And I think that's exactly what you're alluding to here.
Yeah, and it's just that 60K salary on FanDuel is insane when we still have like Benedict Matherin's 1,800, Obi Toppin's 2,200. I mean, I'm playing Thomas Bryant at 1,000, and it's just, $1,000 for Thomas Bryant. If he has 13, 14 points on DK, that's really good. On FanDuel, it's still good, but I just don't know if it's enough because he just might not be necessary.
Right, because he would have to outscore some higher guys if we're leaving salary. And if not, we're still expecting if you play a cheaper guy, and this is the case for a lot of times, is the case in NBA DFS, right? And when you have 2 teams that aren't full of studs, and you're relying on every single expensive player to meet value by jamming in 5 of them plus a cheap guy. And often, Chuck, as you know more than I will, in NBA DFS, that's not necessarily the case. It's really hard for 5 of the top guys to all hit value. Normally, one of them, for one reason or the other, are not hitting value, and that makes that construction a little less viable.
Yeah, because I mean, I'm just scrolling through my Thomas Bryant lineups, and they all have SGA a captain, and they have 3 of 4 of Jalen, Pascal, Chet, and I'll actually throw in Isaiah, Hartenstein, and Nemhard. They all have Nemhard, though. But yeah, just making Chet, Jalen, Pascal, 2 of those 3. Yeah, every lineup has 2 of those 3, even with Thomas Bryant. And so if you're putting one of them at captain, you can probably even fit in another stud with SGA still.
Yeah, exactly. Now let's just play devil's advocate here, Chuck. We're wrong all the time. I'm probably wrong more than you are because I play more volatile sports and talk about them more on YouTube than NBA DFS. But let's say you're wrong. How could you possibly be wrong tonight? What are you taking into account? What could possibly go wrong that this construction, these players that we're talking about, doesn't end up optimal?
It's tough because let's say OKC just wins. We've seen this rotation where SGA, if OKC has a good lead going into the fourth quarter, 20 points plus, SGA is just going to start the fourth quarter, play a few minutes, and then, just make sure the game is out of reach. And Jalen Williams, he's going to play his normal rotation. Chet's going to play his normal rotation, but they're going to check back in. And so even in an OKC blowout, I think that their starters are okay. At least the main 3 guys, Jalen, SGA, and Chet. Hartenstein and Lou Dort are a little bit more iffy. I do like Lou Dort tonight. Like in that case, I'm protected, I think. If Pacers win by a lot, as long as it's Andrew Nemhard and Pascal doing it, Miles Turner, I think I'm protected. I'll say if Tyrese Halliburton has a good game, I'm just drawing dead tonight.
And you believe he's not going to, just based on the defensive matchup and how you expect them to smother him and focus their attention on defense, right?
I'm not an NBA coach, but I can't imagine the game plan is not just to remove Tyrese Halliburton from the game. Like, if you remove Tyrese from the game, make his life hell, make everyone else beat us, I just don't think the rest of the Pacers are even close to capable of it. And so, yeah, just shut down Tyrese Halliburton, make everyone else try and do something. And Pascal's a pretty good sidekick. Nemhard's fine, but these guys are role players, and it's so hard for me to think that the Pacers have a chance at all in this series. But if you do, it's a really good GPP idea to take that route.
And again, this is not something we normally talk about in NBA DFS or Chuck and the rest of our staff talk about during their videos. But again, we don't talk about Showdown very often on this channel for NBA DFS. But on NFL Showdown, we talk about flipping the script and playing 4 underdogs in a lineup, 2 favorites. That's a little bit harder because it's so much value-based decision making in NBA DFS. But that goes hand in hand with what you were just saying. If you think the Pacers compete and can win in this game, that likely means their players are a little more are a little under projected here, and then in that case, you would have more Pacers in your lineup. Let's see. Steven's in the chat. What's up, Steven? Says, any thoughts on Isaiah Joe at 1,200? Chuck talked about the rotations at the top, but just really briefly, Chuck. Isaiah Joe, chances of him getting into the game tonight, chances of him ending up in the optimal.
It's so tough because we've seen him play in the first quarter and we've seen him not be in the rotation at all. I lean towards he probably gets in there in the first half, plays a few minutes. It's kind of high variance. It just matters if he hits a couple of threes or not. But I'm over the field on Isaiah Joe. I think he's a fine GPP play, especially in that the large fields on both sides.
Yeah, good stuff. Okay, cool. Let's go back to the NBA strategy guide and continue on with the rest of these angles. And we kind of talked about this, but we'll get to it here now. And again, if you guys have questions, throw them in the chat. We'll probably be here till 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific for Chuck's time over on the West Coast. So final chance to get your questions in now as we talk about NBA Finals Game 1, Pacers versus the Thunder. And the last option is to play value players whose minutes are not guaranteed. We've seen this at least in one of the unique NBA Finals Game 1 Millionaire Maker winners and unfortunately, it was an injury that caused that. But again, injuries happen all the time. And we saw a 1% owned player in the Millionaire making winning lineup. And Chuck, it sounds like that's something you're not going to advocate for. But I think it is a viable option in the first game of a series, as we talked about, playing the guys that are 1 to 2%. But these are the guys that are at the very end of the bench. We're not even talking about Isaiah Joe. We're not even talking about Kenrich Williams. We're not even talking about Jalen Williams. We're talking about some of these other guys that typically don't play. They would have to play in the blowout in the last couple minutes of the game. To me, though, Chuck, unless you feel strongly that one of them will have a major role in the case of a starter's injury, because the pricing is so soft, it would take a lot for them to actually end up in the optimal lineup in a few minutes of playing time.
I really don't see any of those guys sliding in there. Yeah, just like you said, it just the pricing is too easy today, and with injury, the minutes would just go to someone else who's already in the rotation. I mean, Jalen Williams, I have him for like 3 minutes. Did we even give him minutes in the model? I don't think so. And so a lot would have to happen. And in the case of a blowout, remember, this is the NBA Finals. Like, if the Pacers are down by 30 to start the fourth quarter, Hallie's in the game, Pascal's in the game, or they're about to come in the game. They're not giving up unless it's like 40 points with 6 minutes left. Then we might get 6 minutes of blowout run for the bench guys. But if it's like a 25-point game with 3 minutes left, there's going to be starters on the court. And so even if you're playing that blowout angle, just be aware that the blowout guys still might not get that many minutes.
That is the one difference between NBA playoffs, and especially the finals, than a regular season showdown slate on a random Thursday night where back-to-backs come in or teams are just going to give up earlier than expected. So if you're 150 max in or 20 max in the heart of the regular season, that is a much more viable option than it would be in game 1 of the NBA Finals. All right, so we got a couple more questions in the chat. Richie says, thoughts on TJ McConnell? And again, scroll back to the top of the show for Chuck's thoughts on the rotations tonight. But Chuck, what are you doing with TJ McConnell tonight in your lineups?
I'm a little bit lower on McConnell than the field, but his price, especially on FanDuel at 2,000, is just a pretty ridiculous price. But there's a lot of guys with pretty ridiculous prices, and so I think a good question would be TJ McConnell versus Benedict Mathurin, and I happen to like Benedict Mathurin a little bit more. The model, I don't know if the model's with me on that one, but I just feel like Benedict Mathurin has a better chance to make a difference in the series than TJ McConnell. And so, I don't know. I'm going with Benedict Mathurin if you're going with one of the two of McConnell, but I have a bit of both.
I mean, if one's going to spike, it's probably Mathurin and his scoring ability, I would imagine. So I agree with that.
Getting him lower on too.
Even better. So Decoy in the chat says, so a 4-2 or 5-1 Pacers build is viable for a large field GPP. Again, it's extremely contrarian, but if it's a competitive game where the Pacers win, Chuck, a 4-2 or 5-1 could win. 5-1 seems a little extreme to where only one OKC player ends up in the optimal lineup, but I would assume it'd be like an SGA 50-point performance or something, right?
Yeah, this is a crazy difference between DraftKings and FanDuel again, but on DK, I'm getting some 5-1 OKC stacks. I got 0 5-1 Indiana stacks. Even 4-2 for OKC is very heavily weighted towards, OKC having the 4, but over on FanDuel, I'm actually getting a decent chunk of like the 4-2 stack gap isn't as wide. I'm getting more teams with 4 Indiana players over there, and that's again due to the pricing.
Yeah, so it's very important for the viewers out there who are playing, whether you're playing on FanDuel tonight or DraftKings, it is extremely important on paying attention to the pricing and using the information mostly that Chuck is giving you to factor into your lineup making process. Let's see. So Eli says, if you go with a heavy Pacers build, is it okay for the captain from Indy to be popular? And yeah, Chuck, because the field is not going to play 4 Pacers in a lineup, you can pretty much ignore or lightly consider how much the total ownership or individual ownership is going to factor in, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And especially if you're assuming you're going to get away from at least one of Chet, Jalen Williams, or SGA, preferably Chet or Jalen Williams. I mean, it's like half the field not competing if that guy ends up failing. So I like it. It's
Yeah,
a lot of leverage.
yeah, very true. Steven says, and Chuck, you just say you like Matherin over McConnell, and Steven's asking, do you like Matherin over Toppin?
I have a little more Obi Toppin in my exposures, but like in theory, I would think that Matherin helps you win a GPP more than Obi Toppin tonight if they both have. I mean, if one of them has a good game, I should say.
Yeah, especially with Toppin. Was it the most recent game where Toppin went off? Yeah, 32 fantasy points against the Knicks in their final closeout game. So yeah, compare that to Matherin, who barely played in that game. Just from a recency bias angle, I think that's a good thing to think about as well. So, all right, guys, we got 4 minutes left in the show. Chuck, anything we haven't talked about that you want to discuss that the people should know for tonight's game?
It's like I think these bench guys. One of these bench guys has to be the key tonight because like every lineup basically has to have at least one of these bottom guys unless you're doing something weird with captain. And so I'm thinking about bench versus bench. The Knicks bench sucked, right? And so the Pacers bench kind of had an easy time against them. OKC's bench is probably the best bench of all time. And so don't just go into it thinking like I like Benedict Mathurin tonight. I think Obi Toppin's going to be fine, but it's so easy for them just to have a really difficult time, when it's just bench versus bench. So don't. I would say that how I would deal with that, just don't go too overweight on any one bench player. Like the most exposure I have to a bench player on DraftKings is Benedict Mathurin, 24.5%. I have Kenrich Williams right after that at 21%, and I feel like that's really heavy, but I have a take on him, so I'm going to ride with it.
Yeah, and you mentioned him earlier. Can you just expand on a little bit for maybe people who missed the top of the show? Kenrich Williams, why do you like him so much tonight? Is it just the uncertainty in his minutes and you're a little more bullish on him playing, or what is it?
It's just at the 7% ownership, he's the guy that stands out. Like I have more confidence in him playing in the first quarter than Isaiah Joe, more confidence than Aaron Wiggins at this point. And like the matchup, I don't think necessitates it against the Pacers. The Pacers aren't exactly a large team, but I just 7%. It's really easy for him to come in, hit a couple threes, get a couple rebounds, and just like that, he's already optimal. And I don't know. It's really risky. He could just be a DMP. It's possible, but that's the spot that I'm going to take tonight. Model He has him right in the middle of value, so it seems he's okay.
Yeah, we'll take that. And again, at that ownership, we'll certainly take shots. If he doesn't play, we lose 7%, or lose out on a 7% owned player. And this is a question, and maybe we get these questions from people who don't play NBA DFS as often. I'm not saying this is the case for you, Jeb, in the chat, but says, do you think the captain has to be from the winning team? And let's factor in SGA, most likely to score the most points. They're most likely to win. He is the most owned captain. But what are the chances that a losing player ends up as the optimal captain? I assume, and let's take SGA out of the equation though, Chuck, because even if they lose, he still is probably the highest scoring player on the slate. So in a non-SGA captain lineup, where does the chances fall of a losing player ending up the optimal captain?
It's so tough. If Pacers win, I mean, Jalen Williams could do it, I suppose. But if OKC wins, I have a really hard time seeing who on the Pacers. Like, what would Miles Turner have to hit 6 threes, get 4 blocks? Pascal go off for 30 and 10. I mean, Halliburton, if he maybe they shut down everyone else and let Halliburton do his thing. Halliburton puts up 60 fantasy points and they lose by 25 still. I don't know. It just feels like it has to be an extreme situation because, like I said, if OKC's up by 20, 30 going into the fourth quarter, I think SGA is on the court.
It certainly seems that way, especially with so much on the line. So, guys, that'll do it for this video. We're right around 8 o'clock. Chuck, appreciate you for joining me. Appreciate everyone out there watching. Make sure you subscribe to the channel because it'll be Nick at night, or I guess Nick in the afternoon. But Nick and Jayhawk will be back for Game 2 on Sunday to go live and break down Game 2. So make sure you're live and make sure you're subscribed and be ready for that on Sunday. Our NFL best ball content starts in about a week and a half. So make sure you subscribe to the channel for that. Chuck and Chris will be doing doing those videos here on the channel if you're into NFL best ball. It's getting close. We're less than 100 days away from the start of the NFL season, which is insane to think about. NBA model is up on the site with projected ownership. Our lineup builder is up and running. Still got 30 minutes to build those lineups. And a lot of discussion happens in our Discord server. If you're a member of Occupy or you're a subscriber, a member here on YouTube, you get access to our Discord. And we'd love to have you because people are in there chatting about the games all the time. So good luck to everyone tonight, Chuck. Good luck to you. Appreciate everyone for watching. And go out and enjoy Game 1 of the NBA Finals.